Hello and welcome to the Smart Entrepreneurship Decoded. For one more week, one more episode, one more piece of insight, something that will practical, insightful, something that will take you on your path to entrepreneurship and accelerate it. Recently, Ali Tamaseb, one of the most famous venture capitalists, tech venture capitalists, author, he did a study of all the unicorn founders and the near unicorns also. You'll find that brilliantly articulated in his blog for free on the internet. And he brought out 50 truths about founders of successful startups. It makes a very interesting reading. Tonight, I'm just going to mention three or four of them. More than half the founders started after the age of 35. More than 70% of the founders started after at least 10 years of work experience. More than half the founders had one prior startup before this successful startup. And a very large percentage, above 60-70% of the founders, were successful in a startup completely unrelated to the area of expertise and education. Interesting, isn't it? I would highly recommend you go and watch that blog, read that blog, and see the 50 truths he's put out in graphs, and it's beautifully laid out. It'll give you fantastic insights. Why am I saying that tonight? Because we have an entrepreneur like that with us tonight. We have somebody who started out, stopped, went to corporate life, had a very successful corporate life in some of the leading financial and analytical companies and consulting companies in the world, and IT companies, and has started has had multiple entrepreneurship stints, is still on the journey with one of them, has seen success, has seen failure, and he started late compared to what is fashionably known nowadays, right? People starting in their 20s, there's something romantic about that. Start in your 20s, go against all odds, don't have the skills, but succeed. But the facts are different. Research shows different. So with that, let's welcome our guest for tonight, Mr. Rahul Handa. Welcome, Rahul.
Hi, Nalin. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Most welcome. So the first thing I want to ask you is, how important is it for an entrepreneur to work and pick up some skills before jumping into entrepreneurship? Or is it not important at all?
The way I look at it is that working in as you rightly pointed out, right, I've got some amount of experience in some different companies all over the world. I think that a little bit of all of that has kind of sort of grounded me into what I'm doing also. Besides the point that I was, as you pointed out, right, I was in IT consulting and doing retail and consumer goods consulting or project and program management consulting into healthcare now. So very, very diverse option. But yeah, I mean, the idea of basically working in all of these organizations is that it actually clears up your mind around how do you actually deal with situations, right? Also, it trains you. So having worked for some of these companies, it actually trains you in what you should do, right? In when you're going to be faced with a certain situation. Maybe you will never face that same situation as you did in an organization, but at the same point in time, you have a brain. You have. It kind of sort of sets you up to understand what can be done. You could have heard about it through your training sessions or through the inculcation that you've seen, or even through the institutional knowledge, so to speak. So, to some extent, I would say that it is a good idea to learn on somebody else's mistakes. So, I mean, somebody else's dime, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, we've learned. I mean, you make mistakes in organizations also. At least there is a larger base to kind of sort of cover that. When you're on your own, it's a different matter.
So, for a the university student just passing out, if they are inclined to entrepreneurship, but would like to work somewhere. Sometimes people have compulsion, right? It could be financial, it could be some other. What kind of organization should they go for? Should they go for a multinational set organization, or should they go for another startup, which is a fire in the belly kind of thing? What will accelerate the learning process? Is there something there?
See, I'm of the opinion that going into a consulting company or going into like mergers and acquisitions or a financial setup will give you a very strong setting into what all can be done. You go in the versus you go into a fire in the belly kind of a startup, you're not necessarily going to learn processes, procedures, how you should look at things and all. What you are learning is jugaad. I mean, you're trying to figure out how to get the next dollar, or you're trying to figure out how to make sure that something that is broken, how do you fix that right away, right? So both of them have their pluses. I personally would have said go to a consulting company or go to a organization where they deal in mergers and acquisitions or something, and you learn from there. And
So,
a consulting company will give you a serious amount of knowledge in a very short period of time. So
so that's probably because you see varied situations, different industries, different aged organizations, and then you're
yes,
challenged every day to come up with a solution that will work for them.
exactly. And in that process, you're also learning, right?
Okay.
But if you go into a fresh startup, you're literally trying to figure out how to fix the next day's issue. So you're constantly firefighting, but that doesn't necessarily teach you things, right? It doesn't teach you processes. It doesn't,
Yeah.
and like I remember a long time back when I got into my first consulting gig, and my boss at that point in time turned around and said, "Rahul, what do you think? I mean, do you think that when we are doing consulting and we are faced with a situation that all these things just magically come to our mind?" I said, "Yeah, it looks like that." He goes, "No, it's a process. We always follow a certain process because trying to come up with a solution to a particular problem is 90% of it is a process. And 10% might be that spark, but for the most part, it is a process that you follow."
Yeah, I agree with you. The whole the way you see a problem, the way you prototype a solution, and the way you create processes around them. It more than learning how to create a startup, you learn how to do a scale up. And most of the startups that fail because, of course, there's founder incompetence is number one, but they fail because they don't know how to scale up. They get so caught up and so excited by all the problems and putting out fires that they don't realize that these fires were avoidable. You should not have had half of them. So yeah, that's a different point. But coming back to your own journey, why did you jump into entrepreneurship at this stage? I mean, I know you've been at it for a few years now, but definitely you are not in your 20s, even though you look it. But
Hey, it's
so
white, it's not colored.
oh, I had white hair when I was 14. I thought that was a problem till I have no hair.
So, well, when I started was, as you rightly pointed out, I was doing relatively well in a large organization, moving around different countries, all of that. But somewhere you come, I mean, literally, and I'm not trying to throw out a cliche, but it was always this thing that, yeah, I'm doing the same thing. Okay, today I'm talking to a client about omnichannel. Tomorrow I'll talk about SAP integration. I mean, I'll do similar kind of stuff, and I'll do process integration, and I'll do process that. But at the end of the day, there is this mass thing that you're trying to do, and that's all you're trying to do. What am I actually doing? Where I'm actually going to be able to leave a semblance of a legacy behind. That's what came to me. And you rightly said, right? I started doing this when I was in my 40s. So nowhere even close to being 24. And trust me, it was scary. Even it was scary at that time also, with your family and your wife looking at you and going, "Are you sure you want to do this?" It is scary.
I know I wouldn't want my wife to meet yours because my wife has some horror stories of what I did in my 40s as well.
Yeah.
But but talk me through that part of it because I studied this in depth when I wrote my book on midlife crisis. Uh, when you start in midlife, what is it that you should take care of more than starting off at other times, right? There are financial responsibilities, you have children, you have your social responsibilities, there's pride, ego. uh, what goes through a person's mind and what do you have to give up? And do tell me how the conversation goes with the wife.
That was not. That was a in one way it was very easy. In another way it was really hard. Okay, going up to my wife and saying, "Honey, I'm quitting 3 months, and that's it." Okay, and she's like, "Okay," because remember the family also gets used to a certain lifestyle, right? You're used to going out for okay. I'm saying pre-COVID, but now but
Yeah.
still, you're used to going out maybe once or twice a week to go out and eat food. You're going out for movies. You're going out for parties. There are, as you said, the social environment where you're going to meet up with people and you're getting gifts. So you also have to do that entire thing of the return of the gift and all those things. All that happened, okay. But there is a cost to all those things. Okay, you have a staff and a massive staff line. It doesn't matter because you're getting a certain salary base, so you paying for all of it. So when I went up to my wife and said, "Honey, I'm leaving this," and she says, "Do you know what you're doing?" I'm not sure. I think so. And I was very candid with her. I said, "I think so. I'm not particularly certain about that, but this is where we are." Then it's a slippery slope. From there, she turned around and said, "How long?" It's a very valid question. She said, "How long do you think you will do this?" And I said, "Well, I've put away play money, and then from there we have short-term money, then we have mid-term money, and then we have a long-term money." Okay. And I said, "Oh, we've got play money, and we should be rolling in money in a year and a half." Right? Your optimism kicks in that your idea is the best thing in the world, no matter what, whether it is absolutely never going to work, but it's still there. And I did say that, yeah, we'll figure it out in about a year and a half. So she says, "Okay, let's do this." The year and a half becomes longer. You run through your short term. So you run through your play money, right? From your play money, you go into short term money. And at the same point in time, you realize that you're trying not to make too many changes to your lifestyle because your family has gotten used to it, and your expenses only start increasing, right? I mean, I have a young family, so making sure that the kids are starting to go to school, there is a cost still associated with it. So more or less, you're trying to still keep that life, but that starts eating away at the money. So play money is gone, short-term money is gone. You've dipped into mid-term money, and you're starting to stare down the hole for saying, "Okay, 1.5 years is gone, a long, long time back." And the idea that I said, I've already shut it down. I've already gone to the second idea, and from there I've gone. Now I'm on the third idea. So you don't have any revenue coming in, right? When you're 24, you don't think about those things because you don't have to worry about a family. You don't have to worry about kids going to school. You don't have to worry about salaries being paid to household staff. You're not having to pay about. You're not having to worry about electricity bills to be paid. Okay, so do this later in life. Scarier than hell.
So what's the advice to people who are contemplating a midlife jump into entrepreneurship? What are the one or two things they should take care of?
Uh, Firstly, there are just two parts, right? The first one being do as much research as you can, okay, and talk to your friends and family, and not just the friends who are always going to say yes, yes, whatever you're doing is good. Talk to your friends that you believe are also going to be the naysayers because they probably are looking at it from a different perspective, right? There are no sureties in life, but still look at it properly. Build out a plan, and again, build out a proper plan that you think is feasible. But at the same point in time, again, remember, no business ever succeeds on Excel. Right? You have to do the implementation of it. Businesses on Excel always look fantastic. I mean, you're showing 18% growth year over year. Life is always going to be good. And you're making your crores or your millions in the next 6, 8 months or a year or so. But reality is very, very different. Okay. So that is the first part. So think and then rethink and then talk to people that you think are probably going to give you the not the advice that you're looking to get. Secondly, have a plan in mind that what happens when your play money goes out? What happens when your short-term money goes out? And stick to that plan. That second part I have not followed.
I agree with you. You know, Excel has got this, I call it the biggest curse to mankind. It's got this beautiful graphs where people project revenue and profits. It just goes this way. I mean, even your ECG goes this way to keep you alive, but these graphs just go this way. I
That's
think
it.
Excel should make these as standard templates and give it to entrepreneurs. I don't know why they spend time putting numbers to make it look like that. You can just pre-print it, you know, you can just put labels and pre-print it.
That's
The
it.
other thing which you said is plan. And the third thing which you said is have a time when you say stop, have an exit plan. It's a lot like the stock market, right? So many people make small amounts of profits and the loss comes one time and big. Because when profits come, you cut your profits quickly, and loss you emotionally cling on, thinking it will bounce back, it will come back, it's my decision, it cannot keep on going that way. But life doesn't go as per plan. So, very, very, very interesting points there. So, walk me through the kind of companies you have the setup and what you're doing now, because what you're doing now is from a timing perspective with the pandemic, etc., is bad for the world. But what you're doing is something noble and good, and something that can change stuff. But before that, a few words about what you did before this, and then into this one.
So before I became an entrepreneur, I used to work for AF Ferguson in India, which is now Deloitte. Then I went abroad and I started working for Gartner Consulting, and fantastic time, right? Again, a very very strong learning platform from AF Ferguson to Gartner, etc., etc. Came back to India, started working for Ernst& Young. From Ernst& Young, went into Cognizant, and I was running certain regions for either project or program management, or for even for the Nordics kind of thing. And then I jumped into entrepreneurship. And the first reason, the first thing that I said, listen to the people, and you should be sure about something also, right? So at that point in time, I did my research. We actually also engaged another market research company to do a research for us to tell us whether the idea was good or not. And we started up something called GiftZini, which was a gift registry platform. Okay.
Okay.
Thinking that I've just moved back from India, from the US. This is the standard process out there. Why shouldn't it work out here? And even in the research that came back to us, we got caught into that model of saying that, it says something, but you read it differently, right? You read it in a lens which is optimistic. We weren't able to raise money for that, and after a certain point in time, we said, okay, stop your loss and move on. From there, then we set up an SMS-based payment platform, and this is pre the fast tag. Okay, and the idea was to actually pitch it out to different to the different truck drivers and to trucking companies. So those guys can use an SMS to pay for it. Very quickly realized that that was not going to go anywhere. So cut our losses. Specifically, if you only have like one large client, potential client, and they're not really playing ball with you, and they're just making you dance. Cut your loss, move on. And then from there, I had gone to one of these investor pitches where they were asking investors to come in and put up money for some of the companies and all that they were showcasing. And I still remember having that aha moment from there where they were talking about literally of the bare necessities in life, right? Saying if you want to do something and don't go towards the top of the pyramid because that's where we were, but go towards the bottom of the pyramid and look at where roti kapda makan, right? So how do you the bare necessities of do you have food? Do you have something to cover yourself? Do you have a house? Where are you going to live? Things like that. And then from there, we sat down and with my partner from across the two organizations, Pradeep Ghosh. I've known Pradeep now for 20 years. Okay, he was my boss when I started working in India out of grad school, and he's now my partner also, one of the partners. And he and I sat down and we talked it out, saying that okay, where in that roti kapda makan and the basic necessities can we do something which is actually going to make a difference? So we started with the idea of going into healthcare because healthcare is something which is, and this is where we had learned also from our previous experience of trying to be in e-commerce, where it constantly kept hitting and saying, okay, how many people did you get? How many transactions did you had? And so what we came to was that healthcare was one of those things where the cycle is always going to be there. People will always fall sick, unfortunately. Okay, people will always need to go see a doctor. And from there, we broke it up and said, how do we break up healthcare? And we broke it up into four pillars. One being the scheduling component to it. Second one being the billing component to it. Then the third one that we looked at was the delivery of care, which is when you're saying you're sitting in front of the doctor and the doctor has got to figure out your symptoms, figure out your diagnosis, tell you what the tests need to be done, treatment plans, etc., etc. And just that. Right? And then the fourth one was the preventive and wellness side. We did a scan and we realized that in that delivery of care space, that one part, this is where the consulting experience from earlier came into picture to say, okay, let's do it for ourselves and figure out whether it works. And we came to a decision that in that delivery of care space, there were very, very few players, if at all. So we then started trying to build out that entire thing of saying we need to build a database, right? And then on top of that, we have to have an AI engine, etc., etc. But for the base part, you need to have a database. So it took us about 3 years to build a large data set where we, across every specialization, we know the names of the diseases per specialization. And per specialization, I know what the symptoms are. So literally symptom one, symptom two, symptom three, like that. Similarly speaking, tests, treatment plans, and the medication. And then over time, it just grew. So we started with the idea that a patient's data should be able to go from any doctor in any hospital to any other doctor in any other hospital. And from there, we narrowed it down and kept going more with more of a focus, more of a focus onto getting to a certain point where we said, what we need is something which will be like a clinical decision support system, which is going to help the doctor in the diagnosis profile and also enter the data for that patient. We are not going to try and do scheduling. We will never try and do billing, etc. Because there are HIS, the hospital information systems, which are the ERP of the hospitals. They do that. They are enough for them. Why should I try and do something which is already being done? Let's
So
do something.
just hold that thought for a moment there. So for many of the starstruck young people who even you meet them, right, entering entrepreneurship just after college, all the things you said are so unsexy. You said plan. You said roti kapra makan solution. You said in a structured, process-oriented manner, we analyzed, researched, and found a problem to solve for, which was large enough, which people will pay for. Instead of saying, one fine day I was standing outside a hospital and I saw a patient being handled. And I thought, can this be done better? And then that moment, I had this massive aha, and we built it. And you forget all the 3 years, the struggle, everything. Was it like that? I mean, this 3 years, was it any easier because you had done entrepreneurship before, because you had worked so many years before?
No, it was harder.
Okay.
Okay.
One more
And
question, because your journey and mine is quite similar. I too set up my current startup at the ripe old age of 51 with a friend whom I've known for 40 years, and he was my first boss as well. So this is a question that I can ask very few people because they've had similar experience. Is it easier working with somebody like this or tougher? Is it better to have a professional founder and say you go home, I go home, we don't interfere in each other's lives. But here you're intertwined. Is it easier or tougher?
tougher. Okay. And I'll tell you why. Because I think I got lucky by having Pradeep on board. Right. Pradeep is I tell people he's forgotten more about technology than I will ever know, right? But somehow, regardless of the fact that we've known each other now for over 20 years, he brought that very clear perspective of being that detail oriented. Let's be very clear about what we are doing, why we are doing it. Okay. So where I would say, oh, we can do this and we can do that and all, right? I mean, talk in the sky kind of thing. He's like, no, no, no. Let's get down to brass tacks. Who will pay for this? How will this happen? Right? Talking in the air is easy, but who's going to do this? Right? You turn around and say, "Oh, I need to get, for example, right? Something as simple as, okay, I need to provide the developers access to the SNOMED database so that they can build a dictionary of all the terms to be used. We'll do that. There.
Stuff.
So,
So I agree with you. You know, you do need an ideator like that who thinks forward, strategizes product, but you do need somebody who will always keep you grounded on your feet. So how are we going to do this? And the difficult
and there
part.
are two more people in my company also, and I'm sorry for breaking, right?
Go ahead.
So we have Parag. Parag comes in with that bent of mind of saying, okay, fine, we need to have 5 people to do this or 7 people to do this. How do we do this? How will I get it done? What are the nitty gritties of getting it loaded up onto AWS and the containers, etc., etc.? I don't understand. He does that. Okay. And then somewhere in the middle of it, you also need one more person who's not only going to beat you down, but is going to say, all right, we have to go for a meeting to the hospital. And that is Ashish. Okay. He had gone for his COVID shot. He was sick as hell. He and I still went to a hospital and we waited for 2 hours to see a doctor. Okay. So it like they say, right? You need a village
Yeah,
to build. I mean,
it's true.
to grow a child. You need a small little village of people also to build a
Yeah.
startup. Not just one person can do it.
But you know, knowing somebody can be a double-edged sword because a lot of emotion gets involved, right? If it was just a professional relationship, you would just go home and crib about the person. But here, you know each other from decades, and it becomes difficult. And it is interesting how people choose co-founders. But despite all that, any day I would go with somebody I know and trust because at the bottom of that pyramid of success, trust, integrity, etc., etc. My partner said something very interesting to me when we were starting out. I said, why are we doing this together with each other? Why not with somebody else? After all, both of us have hundreds of friends, though we have known each other for 40 years. And he said, Nalin, there's one very important thing here that I know about you and you know about me. If something happens to me tomorrow, I know you will come back and take care of my family, and whatever is due to me will come to them. So
Yeah.
that's a powerful statement. And if that is not, that trust is not there, then however professional you may be, I don't think it will last for too long.
Yeah, not just that. I'll give you another one, right? Not just will I make sure that the other person is going to take care of my family if I'm not there, and you and I look down that from a different perspective than a 24-year-old. Right?
Sure.
And I get that. Um, we are talking to another person and saying, okay, what if something happens to us during COVID? I have shares, you have shares, everything, all of that is fine and dandy, but it doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. Will you still take care of my family? Yes, absolutely. The second part to it, right? Something happens to me, I have Ashish to back me up. Okay, if I can't take a meeting, he will take a meeting. If something happens to Parag, I know that Pradeep will jump on and call up the developer and sit down and talk to them. So each one of us kind of sort of also has a backup. So not just is there a trust, and we have now known each other. Whether it was, some of them started professionally, some of them started on a social platform, but maybe we got lucky. Okay, that yes, it was a matter of saying that I trust this person, I want to work with this person. The second part that also happened was that the trust and then the skill set came into picture. Trust is the underlying base, but then the four sets of skill sets were there, and it kind of sort of just worked for us.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. It's very similar to my experience right now. Let's get back to your product for a moment. So we spoke before the show, and you were telling me that you built this engine that assists doctors. Doesn't replace them, but maybe one day it could. It assists doctors. Now, it
Right.
assists doctors to make better informed decisions. So,
Yes.
is it something like they put all the symptoms, they put all the mitigating factors around it, and it kind of throws options at them? Is that what it is?
Exactly that.
Is it
So
AI driven? Is there AI into it? Does it learn on its own and mature?
no,
Not
and I'll
yet.
tell you what. Okay. So, as I said, it took us about 2.5, 3 years to build a large database, which was covering every disease, every specialization, and then per disease, the symptoms, etc., etc. And that became the core of the system. The core of the system also we realized that we are never there to try and replace the doctor. That can never happen because remember the system didn't go to medical school, the doctor did.
Yeah.
Okay? So we are an aid, we are a physician's assistant. We are the glorified secretary to the doctor. Okay. The idea literally is the doctor just taps and selects the symptoms. Based on the symptoms chosen and a bunch of parameters, which could be from age and sex, as well as pre-existing conditions or allergies, etc., and the medical history of the patient, the system will pop up and suggest to the doctor and say, these are the most probable diseases based on the databases that we built. Okay, depending on the disease chosen or diseases chosen or overridden by the doctor and a new disease put in. So the system will recommend and say, these are your standard tests and investigations that you can order. Okay, obviously, again, you can override. Then comes your treatment plans. And it is actually all structured out, codified. And again, all you have to do is just click, 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 and select. Then you do your medications, prescription is created.
So, what stage is it at? Is it commercial? Is it pilot? Where is it now?
Well, we've got two paying clients right now. Other than that, we are now a part of the product portfolio of GE Healthcare for the entire
Okay.
Southeast Asia region.
Okay.
And also, from another larger perspective, we are one of the 7 companies in the country which is NDHM compliant, which is the National Digital Health Mission compliant. Where NDHM is the brainchild which was launched out in August of 2020 with the intent of saying that any patient's data should be able to go from anywhere to anywhere and make sure that there is an ecosystem created, whether it was whether it was Ayushman Bharat or it was insurance company or the hospital or the doctor or the patient, everybody kind of sort of plays nice, right? And as I said, we are one of the 7 companies which have been able to integrate into that, exit out of the sandbox, and we are now we also have production access across 7 union territories in India.
Okay. That's fantastic. So, so what's next? Are you raising money, or what are you doing next?
So now that we have all of this done and we are onboarding a couple more people, etc., from a client perspective, now we are starting to go out and say, hey, we're looking to raise money. So far, we are completely bootstrapped, right? And that sexy part about, oh, we got $5 million and we went and blew it up on 3 ads. We didn't do any of that. Okay. The other unsexy part of it is that you will learn how to use the technology that you have to the utmost. Okay? I'm using a computer which is 5 years old. And when you're in a corporate job, those are things that you'd never even think about, right? The IT department shows up to you every 9 to 12 months and says, sir, here's your new laptop. And you say, thank you very much. And you give them back your old laptop and you carry on. You never even think about this.
Yeah.
But now, in this scenario, you think about it and say, if I buy a new laptop, that is the salary that I would have to pay the developer for 1 month. Can I afford that? Do I need to?
I agree with
So
you. So,
we're raising money now, but that is more around the operations and the little bits of development more that are left over. So we'll see.
so the any experience with investors as yet?
Um,
Must be an
for the first
interesting
time in
time.
my life, sorry.
Must be an interesting time meeting investors. And the
Actually,
question,
we've had a couple of conversations with some, and one we've turned down. So when we were talking to this as a potential partner to us, and they said we want to put money into you, and we said not right now, not the right time. That was one of the hardest decisions we four of us took as a thing, right? To say this, and this is as early as about 3 months back when we turned around and said, no, we don't want your money right now because we're trying to onboard another client, we're trying to complete this. That was hard, right? So we said, no, not right now. And now we have two private investors who are trying to see if they want to put money into us. Those conversations are going ahead. But it's actually a much different conversation because no longer are we in that phase of saying, yeah, we're still building the databases out or we're still building the AI platform out, etc. Okay. So it's a much more different and a much more evolved conversation that happens now. You had also asked another question. Is there an AI platform to it? And does the system learn and so on? Yes, there is an AI system, but it's a minimal, small little thing.
okay.
However, it is also there, which is going to do only guided learning. Because health is something that we don't want the system to go and learn on its own because we don't know what it will go and learn. So we'd
So
rather
in your model, who pays for this? Is the doctor and the hospitals? I mean, what is the monetization model?
so we are a SaaS-based model.
Okay.
And the way we structured it is that per prescription generated, we want a couple of bucks.
Okay.
Okay. And that is paid to us by the hospital, not the doctor, not the patient. So the patient, in essence, it kind of sort of, if you look at it far enough ahead down the chain, the patient is actually paying for it. But we
So
get such a minuscule amount out of it.
it's a quality assurance tool for the hospital that doctors are providing some consistent, basic standard, things are ticked off, there's no obvious mistake, and things like that, just as a starter.
Well, no, there is also a revenue play. There has
Mhm.
to be, right? Otherwise, it's an add-on cost. No hospital can afford it or wants to afford it. Even if
Okay.
the ones who can afford it don't want to. So there is a efficiency play in the sense that because of the system, the doctor and the hospital can increase their throughput. So first
Okay.
part of it is that if the doctor without our system can see, say, 100 patients, with our system can see about 120. Okay. The second one is how do I keep the patient inside the hospital? So once a patient has come inside for an OPD visit, can I keep the patient inside? Because that is another very, very important factor, right? I don't want to have lost meetings about lost potential lost revenue when the patient has left the hospital and I'm doing it on a Friday after the patient has left on a Monday. Can I track that patient while that patient is in the hospital and before the patient leaves the hospital and capture him for everything for tests and medications, etc., etc.? Can I do that there? Right. And thirdly, our system is built out so that it doesn't come across to the doctor as a new system. They don't have to, and the hospital also, it doesn't have to say, oh, there's a new system that we are incorporating. One day we will just turn it on and they'll just be able to, they don't even have to tab. It'll power up their existing engines. It'll start showing up on their screen.
So while you're building it, do you guys, do your technology guys just for fun go and put up some of their own symptoms they're feeling on the day and check out if something throws up?
Yeah. And the doctors who are involved in our entire process to build this, uh, some of them actually turned around to us and said, Rahul, this the reliability and the efficient and the point of it is so accurate that we are scared at times. We went in to pitch it to a large hospital chain, and one of the senior most doctors turns around and said, I like your system. I really like it, but I will not buy it. He said, why, sir? Because this the analogy was like the GPS, right? Before GPS came about, you learned how to read a map or you used your brains on what road to take, what time, etc., etc. After that, you started looking at the map, and then GPS came along, and you followed Google Maps almost blindly. He said, "That's what I don't want to happen with your system." Right? Now we said, "Sir, it will actually increase the efficiency and all of those things, and it's purely suggestive in nature." But he said, "Let me think about it." So we're still waiting for him to come back to us. It's been a few weeks, but we'll see.
Okay. I was so engrossed in our conversation, I didn't notice we're completely out of time. Rahul,
Oops.
what next? My final question, what next? Is this it? Is this what you will monetize you personally? And is this it? Or are you going to now, is there some more startups left in you?
No, no more startups left in me. I am done. This is it. This is where I want to finish off and say I want to run it for the next few years. Okay, and I want to make sure that this is actually gets to the point where the four of us have actually sat over and discussed this on so many calls. And to me, the four of us and our extended families are very, very important. So I want to make sure that we get it to a certain point where families and friends are actually going to be able to make something out of it.
Well said. Well said. Exactly the stage of life I'm at too. So Rahul, wonderful having you here. Wonderful. Your insights, your
Thank you.
stories resonates very well with me because I've had a lot of similar experiences, and it's so important for people to understand that startup is not just the glamorous thing you read about in the paper, but every so-called overnight success story has got a decade of history behind it, and you brought that out very elegantly. Thank you,
Thank you.
Rahul. All the best. Your company sounds absolutely wonderful. I'm sure it will do very well. My best wishes for it.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.